Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1988's Gator Bait 2. This is 1988's Gator Bait Part 2. Now, the original Gator Bait was, I believe, in 1974, which I've done a review for on this YouTube page already. You can check that out. And this was made in 1988, and it was produced and directed by the same married couple that did the original Gator Bait. And on the front of this, on the poster art, it says half animal, half animal, all woman. They took her by force, stole her innocence, made her a savage. This is Gator Bait 2. This is the back of the DVD here. And we have some pics. And actually, this is from the same distribution as Gator Bait 1, which is PanamaFilms.com. Now, I checked on Amazon, and you can get both of these for very, very cheap, brand new, like $4 or something. I bought this one about 6 years ago, and it was about like $5 or something like that on Amazon. So this looks like almost like it's self-distributed by the producer and director, the husband and wife duo, Fred and Beverly Sebastian, as it's called, the Director's Special Edition. And they have kind of their own special features that looks like they were made and distributed themselves and chosen themselves. These editions chosen themselves. I believe these are the only ways to watch these films is on these DVDs. These are the only DVDs that you can watch Gator Bait 1 and 2 officially released from the husband and wife duo. Let's get into Gator Bait 2 from 1988 right here, folks. Gator Bait 2, we have an entirely different cast, an entirely different storyline. There's no tie in story with the original Gator Bait, or even in actors or actresses or characters from the original Gator Bait. But what we do have is it's like we have another story in the swamps, another story with history and vengeance. And vengeance on many levels within history and within the current time. This is a story of the swamps, and we have a newly married couple, a city girl marrying a guy from the swamps, and she enters into his world, and his world is filled with not only the swamps and new ways of eating and living and a much more simplistic form of life, and there's gators and there's snakes as pets, and crabs and crab hunting, crab fishing, but it also comes with a past and a story of vengeance that her new husband has, a death in his family and the perpetrators of that death. And this is where Gator Bait 2 takes us. And Gator Bait 2, I would say, almost mixes I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left, and The Hills Have Eyes in the southern swamplands. So if you kind of take those different vibes together from those films and you bring it into the swamps, you bring it into the gator swamp, humid, no electricity vibe. This is definitely rape revenge in many regards, which definitely sets it apart from the original Gator Bait film. Let's get into Gator Bait 2. First and foremost, we're going to look at the music for this film. The music for this film has swamp written all over it. We have acoustic guitar, we have banjo, harmonica sounding, some sounds, but this is where things get very, very weird. We have that Cajun swampy sound We also have some almost bayou music, live bayou music at a wedding reception. But then we start to mix in some horror cues, some kind of tense, dark cues, but a heavy dose of almost avant-garde electronica and synths. So when you mix this type of bayou, swampy, acoustic guitar, harmonica, banjo music and mix dark, cacophonous electronica synths with it, you have a very unique sound. Now, this film has a lot of brutality in it, and I would say, in comparison to the original Gator Bait, this is in an entirely different world of brutality, of sexual brutality, um, and a vengeance, definitely. So the music reflects that in its darkness at times and in the weirdness of the mixtures of the music and the mixing of the genres of the music. I mean, we're here in 1988, and so of course we're bringing in some synth tones, and these synth tones are very jarring and almost oppressive, very oppressive. And when you mix that with the country sounds, the swampy sounds, it makes for a very bizarre, unnerving, and interesting, unique sound. We also have some soothing bayou music in this film as well. Lots of different tones going on in this movie, and that's reflected in the music, with a predominant focus on some pretty tense, dark themes. Now, stylistically, cinematography, very interesting. We have some repeated vibes or some repeated little pieces from the original Gator Bait, even though it's an entirely different story and characters. We have some little repeated things like a boat having to make a very daredevil jump. We also have the uses of snakes, which is in both films, kind of venomous snakes done in different ways. And of course, we also have, as I mentioned, the element of a backstory to characters. And this backstory brings with it much violence and much hatred and a need for vengeance and a lack of forgiveness. So you kind of have all these things in here. That are stewing and they're just getting worse and worse by the day for these characters. Now, stylistically, this film has a rape, revenge vibe to it and storyline to it, and it is quite brutal and quite oppressive at times. And as I stated previously, it reminded me of I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left, and The Hills Have Eyes. There were even sections of the music, by the way, I think electronically possibly, that reminded me of The Hills Have Eyes, Wes Craven's original Hills Have Eyes. So that was interesting. I wanted to mention that as well. So not just in story and in the way things pan out, but also in the rape revenge. We also have some beautiful, awesome shots once again of the boats in the film. Lots of boats in the film. That's those are the cars in this movie, are the boats, and the swamp is your road and your ticket to each destination, to each home, to each area. And there are some very convincing dingy areas. I mean, we're looking at a very kind of a poor area, definitely a poor area. And there's this one location that has almost reminded me of a location actually in Jess Franco's Killer Barbies, which is very interesting. But it's kind of like a dilapidated brick home, um, uh, without a roof and without sides, but just kind of the pillars of the brick house. It kind of seemed like that. And dogs that are malnourished, foxes that are malnourished, dogs and foxes that are chained, that are really malnourished. They look malnourished. I mean, some very, very, very poverty-stricken, oppressive vibes in some locations of this film, and a shack and numerous shacks along the water. We have some wild, awesome shots of kind of the trees in the swamp going by as you're watching the boats moving. And it's kind of, dude, there was this one section of the film that was just really interesting stylistically and beautiful to look at, and just uniquely edited, uniquely filmed. And there's some great cinematography, first person view on the boats, and then of course taking in these very wild boat action sequences. And you are out in the middle of nowhere, you are in the swamps, you are in kind of the thick forests around the swamps, and you're seeing real animals, real alligators and snakes and crabs. This does not look like stock footage. Now, interestingly enough, we also have an 80s vibe to the credits of the film. Just in the way the credits looked, it almost looked like a kind of has that lower budget 80s vibe. Almost could, the credits could almost have that vibe of kind of like a shot on video in the 80s, something like that. And in terms of, the acting and the characters and the storyline, obviously very dark. And there's also a love story in here as well. But you also have tiny little elements of almost humor, almost black humor, and even in maybe some exaggerated characters in acting in some of them, which kind of bring out a possible intent for some humor in here, which is even more crazy given the subject matter. We also have strong sexuality from the lead girl in this film right here, the redhead. And it's a sexuality as she experiences sexual violence. Her vengeance has a sexuality about it in her clothing, in her naked body. We see her breasts, we see her butt, we see her in lingerie, and we see her in very high shorts. There are sexual situations in the film, but she is definitely not just as a presence who is within this storyline. She is also, her body, her nude body is a presence to be victimized and to be kind of redeemed at the same time. This is a pretty hard film in terms of the kind of the violence. I don't want to say gore, although there is some bloodletting in this film that is quite brutal. And when I say that, it's not gore. It's just the tone. It's the tone. It's a violent tone. There's this neck slitting that, it's not like it's some elaborate special effect. It's that it's very gut-wrenchingly dark and oppressive and vicious. The original Gator Bait also had a very, I would say it had a violent tone about it, and this film amps it up to the nth degree with the rape revenge elements, mixing that with a love story and some humor and some, weird Last House on the Left type characters, and you have quite a dark, oppressive, interesting, unique, and sometimes beautiful film, Gator Bait 2, 1988, folks. Here it is, Gator Bait Part 2. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bazaar YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like this anomaly that is so unknown, Gator Bait Part 2. Awesome film. Definitely check it out if it sounds like something that you want to get into, because it does get quite brutal.